Hey guys, Warren back again, and I want to do a little bit of a tank review on this IS-5. I noticed that it was in the in-game store for bonds, 10,000 bonds, so I wanted to give you guys a review on this tank and see if it's worth the bonds or not. So I have two pretty good games here to showcase you guys, and these were the best games that I even had, so that kind of goes to show you a sneak preview of what my thoughts are on this tank. So here we're on highway in a tier 9 game, and one of the things that I noticed in this tank is it plays similar to an IS-3. How I describe it. I haven't played the IS-3 in years, since I sold that tank, and I mean that the IS-3 is an okay tank. I would say it's been overshadowed by the recent premium additions like the Object 252 Defender, even the Czechoslovakian heavy tank. And so, or not Czechoslovakian heavy tank, what am I talking about? The 50 or the 45 TP, I believe that's what it is. So there are definitely other heavies, the Patriot, the French heavy tank, premium heavy tank, both of them, the Samoa and the other one. I can't really remember which one it is. One of the M4, MLE, whatever tanks. But this tank, I would say, is a little bit weaker than pretty much all of those other premium tanks that you can get. And hopefully I can showcase you a little bit of that here in these two battles. So the first thing that I noticed is one of the positives that I noticed in this tank is the mobility. It's much better than, or not much better, but it's slightly better than the IS-3, I feel. The IS-3, especially since I've been playing the IS-3A recently, it's very sluggish, that tank. So this tank is definitely better for people who like mobility, like myself. So that's one pretty good positive. But one of the biggest weaknesses of this tank is the actual gun. Although it gets pretty good standard rounds of APCR rounds of 221 penetration, which is, I feel like it's pretty standard at this tier anyways. It's the gun handling that I feel lets this tank down, right? This gun handling, this aim time, as well as the accuracy and the dispersion values, which we'll see when we do the tank comparison, is just not very good at all. And so that's a thing that I find with this tank is you kind of have to fight close quarters, and then even in those situations your armor will definitely fail you. So you kind of play like a support heavy tank in certain situations, especially in tier 9 games. In tier 8 games where you're top tier, you can play a little bit more aggressively, but even in those situations I feel like it's important to conserve your HP and really not try to get hit. So here I try to do some reverse side scraping, and that's one thing that is a very big strength of this tank, is the side armor is very good at 120 millimeters. And so you can reverse side scrape very well in this tank. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to showcase it to you, but I know that looking at the armor model, that reverse side scraping is very good with this tank. So here I noticed that, you know, we're definitely gonna lose this side of the map, right? It's a 6 versus 2 of us, so I take the opportunity to retreat here, and unfortunately I couldn't save our IS-32 friend even though I really wanted to. There's no way I can hold off 6 tanks, right? And so I make a tactical decision to retreat here and get some more distance between me and my enemies so that I can wither down their HP a little bit more, because right now they're all pretty healthy. So they're definitely going to push through. And we get a nice shot on that Sturv. And you can just see how much the gun blooms on this tank. And look at this aim time. It's just, I'm just waiting. And there, even when I'm fully aimed, it's still not as accurate as I would like, right? This 0.44 accuracy, I believe, is just atrocious. And so even at about 300 meters, we cannot accurately and consistently hit that cupola on the M103, that stock M103. One good thing is the caliber on this gun. The 122 millimeter means that we can overmatch the Sturv's 40 millimeters on top, right? Because it's 3 times his armor, which is 40 millimeters. So 3 times is 120. So since we have 122, we can overmatch his frontal armor, which is pretty good. So here is probably the best situation that you can probably find in this tank, is being hull down and get a nice bounce there on the Sturv as well as the AMX. And this is probably the best ideal situation for this tank, is staying hull down, trying to keep your frontal armor towards the enemy, and just trading 1 for 1, right? We get 390 alpha damage on this tank, and we roll for 465, which is pretty good. I'm surprised that shot penetrated us. I'm not sure if he shot at our lower plate. No, he penetrated our upper plate, so we'll have to take a look at the post-game battle viewer to see where that shot penetrated, as well as that one. So this WZ, he's just coming up on this ridge. I'm not sure what he's trying to do there. And then now we just push in and I get the kill shot on that M103, so pretty good shot there. And that's one good thing. I mean, we're up to 2,200 damage. I feel like in some certain other tanks, I would have more damage, because just of the accuracy of this tank is not very good. And I mean, the DPM is pretty average, I would say, for tier 8 heavies. And so we just run down this CDC, and our buddy in the Sturv, I think, hits him and takes him out. So, I mean, this is one of the better battles that I had in this tank. 2,200 damage and 1,000 assistance, right? So that's what I find in this tank is a good result, is around 2,500 combined damage and assistance damage. And I mean, that's pretty mediocre, I would say, for this tier. And I don't know, I thought I was gonna like this tank more, but now that I play it, I struggle to do really well, and I feel like I'm pretty try-harding as much as I can, and I can't even get amazing results. And it's not, it's just meh is how I would describe it, really. It's just mediocre. Okay, so this was the game on Highway, and I have the battle hits here. This is a mod that I have. So we can see that the CDC at the end of the battle bounced off the upper plate, and we were showing him about this angle right here, so that makes sense. And this makes sense as well. The AMX M445, the tier 7 French tank, penetrated us in the turret ring here. can see that this is kind of like a shot trap. So I guess he got lucky with that. And then this one kind of surprised me because at the end of the battle, we were fighting pretty much we tried to fight a bit hull down, and he penetrated us straight through our upper plate, right? And at this angle, he still penetrated us. So maybe he got a high roll, but that's very interesting. Here, right over to the little bit to the right, he did not penetrate. And then another shot here. I would think that this shot would actually penetrate since the pike nose is angled towards this shot, but luckily we didn't pen, and the stirve bounced off our gun mantlet, and then he also bounced off the side of our tank. So we tried our best to move backwards and forwards so he wouldn't have a shot in our cupola, and luckily he didn't aim there. If he had better marksmanship, he probably could have hit us here and penetrated us. So this tank, I think the biggest strength of this tank is not the armor, it's the mobility, right? And it's definitely not the gun. Okay, so here we have a tank comparison of pretty much all the other premium heavy tanks that you guys would have an option of purchasing, and then the IS-3, which is more of a direct comparison. So first thing right off the bat, DPM, they're all around 1900 to 2000 or 1800 to 2000 DPM, except for the low, which is a tank I would not recommend unless you have to get a German heavy tank crew trainer, right? So I'm gonna make this review as an assumption that it doesn't matter what nation that you guys get, you just want a heavy premium tank to make credits, right? And then if you do want a Soviet one, I'll talk about the Defender, the IS-3, and the IS-5. And I haven't included the IS-3A because it's kind of a different animal. I'll talk about that at the end as well. But 390 Alpha is in the middle, I would say. You have tanks like the 50 TP and the Defender who have higher alpha, and then you have tanks that are lower, like the Renegade and the E-75 TS, as well as the AMX and the Patriot, and the low. The caliber of the gun is joint highest, which is definitely a plus. As you noticed when we were fighting that stirve, it came in handy because we could overmatch his armor, so that was definitely a good thing. And this is a very good thing about this tank is the shell velocity, since it has APCR rounds standard, 1400 meters per second, which is very fast. And it even caught me off guard when I was shooting that Lynx in that first game, so very good ammo. Based on these gun stats initially, I would say it's average, is I would say. Average to a little bit better, right? But you also have to take into account gun handling, and this is where I think that this tank really suffers. The aim time is actually a bit better than the IS-3, but it's worse than any other heavy, right? And then it has the same aim time as a Defender. The dispersion is the worst out of all of the other tier 8 heavies, which is probably the biggest weakness of this gun. And even the dispersion while moving, turning the turret, and traversing the gun, it's either joint lowest or it's way worse than any other tank in this comparison. And so, yeah, the gun handling is trash on this tank. The elevation is second worst, and the E-75 TS is slightly worse than it, but the E-75 is a very tall tank, so it doesn't really have any problems in that regard, so this kind of is a knock against it, but 17 is pretty fine. And then here is just a really bad stat with a depression of 5 degrees, is same as the IS-3, which wasn't very good in the first place. This definitely knocks it back. The mobility, it's pretty good. It has the second highest top speed at 42 kilometers per hour, and The reverse speed is joint lowest, but 14 is okay, I would say. Engine power is joint lowest. So I find it's better than the IS-3, the IS-3A, and pretty similar to the Defender. And I would say it's slightly better than the 50 TP. The 50 TP seems a little bit sluggish compared to this tank. So I would say in the mobility, it's pretty good. The hull armor, I mean, these numbers look very good, especially the side armor, which is why this tank is such a great reverse side scraper. But the turret, although it looks on paper, it looks pretty good. The cupolas are very prominent, as we'll show in the armor model. As for miscellaneous, the camo is actually pretty good. The tank is pretty low profile, so as with most mobile Soviet heavies, it's pretty good with camo. The view range is pretty weak. I mean, it's just above the IS-3 and the Defender. And as you noticed, even with binos, or not binos, coated optics, I couldn't even get to the 445 max view range. So, and then this is actually probably one of the biggest weaknesses, I think, which is that the shell cost is the highest out of all other tier 8 premiums, and it's significantly higher than the 50 TP, which I think is a way better credit maker. And then the Patriot, I mean, this is just insane. I mean, it does have less alpha, but I mean, if you think about it, this tank, if it fires 2 shots, it'll have more damage than the IS-5, and so even at 500, it's literally half the cost of the IS-5. So yeah, I would say that most of these tanks, with the exception of probably the low, and then in certain situations the E75 TS is worse, but I can't really think of any situation where the IS-5 would be the best tank to take in this situation, right? And let's take a look at the armor model. So here we have the armor model, and the upper hull is pretty good against lower tier tanks, but at the same tier tanks, it's not very effective. Like, look at this lower plate. Anyone's gonna go through that. And the moment you start trying to angle your lower plate, this front plate is just very weak. And then the turret armor is only 30. The top of the turret is only 30 millimeters, so you're gonna get overmatched by any 91 millimeter gun or higher. And then this cupolas are just so easy to hit, right? And so the armor, the turret armor, even if you're going hull down and you're using all of the gun depression, right? Like, they can still see the sliver of your cupolas. So, and especially if you're fighting close quarters, like, you can't really rely upon this armor, right? But what I will say is that when you try to reverse side scrape, right, this armor is very, very, very good, right? With the exception of here a little bit, so you might want to angle a little bit more like this. Like, you can get crazy, like 800 millimeters effective on the sides. And this side skirt is actually really, really effective. Like, if they hit you on here, it's pretty much going to get absorbed, right? So the side armor is very, very good. Excellent on this tank. So I would even sometimes entice your enemy, like if you're going face, and maybe they'll shoot you in the side and it'll just get absorbed. Like, look at this 500 effective armor. So sometimes when you're fighting in this tank, it might be wise to over angle your side to entice them to shoot, and then hopefully they won't pen, right? And you can even see that the side armor on the upper of the side is angled at like 60 degrees. So that's why this armor on the side is so effective, right? So it's pretty troll on the sides. But I would say that the armor is not very good in most situations, right? So let's take a look at the second battle. Hey guys, So we're on to replay number 2, but actually this is my very first battle that I had in this tank. So I just bought this tank. I'm just interested in seeing how this tank does. And hold on, I'm getting a call.
3 days later.
Okay, sorry about that. I'm back here. Had to take a call. But yeah, this is my first battle that I had in this tank, and I was pretty excited when I got this tank. I remember quite faintly the first time I faced against this tank, which was probably back in when I first started the game, back in probably like 2017 or even earlier, maybe 2015, when I faced against this tank. And I mean, I just got our team just got absolutely wrecked by this tank, and I think it was a combination of this tank, and at the time there weren't as many overpowered premium tanks, as well as the player who was behind the tank was amazing. So I've always kind of wanted this tank, and so that's why recently I picked it up. But now that I have it and I've played it, it just I mean, look at that shot. Like, wide open, green lower plate on that TS-5 who drove over the ridge, which I would say is is a mistake. And trying to aim for that cupola, and we can't even penetrate it. I mean, maybe it goes to show that the TS-5 is kind of overpowered. Definitely a very good, one of the better TDs at tier 8. And get a nice shot into that Eagle 7. And so, I mean, I think it's this game that I realized that you can't really clutch shot in this tank. You have to, unless you're like, you know, point blank like that, because the accuracy and just the dispersion when moving and turning the turret is just atrocious on this tank. See there, I mean, I think it's just the penetration. It's just the penetration there. So here I'm trying to, that's a bad shot there. The TS-5 did a good job of angling his armor towards me slightly at the end, and therefore I bounced my heat shot. I was gonna aim for the track, but I knew I had heat loaded. And there's another bad shot. I should be aiming at the cupola right now. I really should be aiming at the cupola. And I take a shot from the T-29, unfortunately. And another bad shot into the tracks. And so now I'm like, all right, I don't want to fire as many heat rounds. I'm wasting all these credits, so it's my wallet screaming at me. So I'm just trying to be a little bit patient here. I know that our side, if you could look on the map, our side is definitely we're gonna push this one line. So I know I just need to bide my time here and stay alive. So I noticed that the TS-5 is trying to go to this window over here. So I want to try to meet him there. And aiming at the cupola. Get a nice penetration there. But I eat damage in return as well. And I eat another shot there, which is surprising. Actually, no, it's not surprising, since it looks like he pinned my upper plate there. Right. Trying to see if he hit my cupola. Doesn't look like it, but I mean, the cupola is very weak on this tank, so it wouldn't surprise me. And there he donks his shot. So I put a heat round into his cupola. But I noticed that his cupola is like orange some of the time, so I want to guarantee penetration. And there, I mean, yeah, upper hull. Really can't do much there. But there you can kind of see how it does against, I mean, another premium tank, right? The TS-5, which, I mean, has pretty strong armor, really strong armor frontally, and we barely scrape by there. And here I'm just really scared because I think that the T29 might load HE, right? Because I'm on 1 HP. But yeah, I mean, this kind of sums up this tank, really. The gun handling and accuracy, even at point blank range, is just bad to mediocre at best. Yeah, I'm trying to feather a shot in this T29. I'm constantly taking a look at this map because I know that someone might come, and I kind of noticed this a little bit late, but the Super Hellcat comes and get a good shot into him, and I'm just praying that he bounces, and it looks like he does. Bounces off the lower plate, it looked like. So, I mean, fighting against lower tier tanks is definitely you can play more aggressive and your armor will hold up. But against higher tier tanks and equal tier tanks, you do struggle a bit. And I did fire a decent amount of premium ammunition this game, so we'll see how that affects our profitability at the end of this game, right? So, I mean, that kind of sums up this tank, really. I mean, this is one of the better games that I had. I mean, this is my first game. I got really lucky with the matchmaking, being top tier. And let's take a look at the post game here. Okay, so here's our first battle in the IS-5. It was a second class mastery. We were second on damage and second on experience. Skoda carried this team pretty hard here. 2,600 damage, right? And let's see. 15 shots fired, 11 hits, 8 penetrations, right? So we only did damage to just over half of our rounds, right? I can just imagine in any other tank at this tier, we probably would have hit more shots in the time and done way more damage, right? And pretty much all of it was within 300 meters, right? 2,200 of it. And we actually blocked 5 shells, so that was pretty good. That's, I would say, is pretty unusual with this tank, is blocking this much damage. And we had 1,000 assistance, and that's what I noticed with this tank is I get a bit more assistance with this tank than my other Soviet premium heavies, so that's kind of a surprise. And here we made 123,000 credits, but that's with the 50,000 additional credits, right? And it's okay as a credit maker, right? So let's take a look at the other battle. Okay, so here's our very first game in the IS-5. And it was a second class. And we got Spartan, okay. That was from blocking the Hellcat at the end. And we were top on experience and top on damage. I mean, this was just a very lucky game. I want to see this TS5. Yeah, he did 1100, he was okay. But yeah, I mean, this was probably our second best game that we had in this tank. I mean, 2,600 damage, 1,700 assistance, right? This is way over average. 15 shots fired. I mean, 7 penetrations. Look at that. We penetrated less than half of our shots, right? So, I mean, I guess that goes to show with the TS5, we bounced a lot of rounds. Half of them, I think, was my fault, and then half of them was just because the TS5 has ridiculous armor. Especially all those heat rounds that I fired into the sides of those tanks, I probably should have just fired standard, right? And we received 6 shots, and 4 of those penetrated, and 2 of them bounced, right? So this is kind of more the average, how the armor works out. You get miracle bounces, right? But most of the time, the armor's not that effective, right? The exception of reverse side scraping. And 46,000 credits, right? I mean, this is okay. I mean, there are definitely other credit makers that are way better. I think that the ammunition costs about 1,000 credits per shot standard, and probably around 4,000 per gold round. So there are other tanks like the Scorpion who have ammunition that's similar, but you do 490 damage, and it's way more accurate and more mobile. So in that tank, I easily get about 80. I make 80,000 credits on a win like this. And if I have a game like this, I'll probably make over 100,000 credits per battle in that tank, right? Because the ammunition, because of the alpha you have on that gun is just superior, and you have more accuracy. Like in that tank, I would probably see like 15 shots fired, 12 hits, and 10 penetrations, right? Or maybe even closer to this, like 15, 14, and then like 13 or 12, because you have high penetration and you have APCR standard on that tank as well. So you have good shell velocity. So, if you really need a heavy, there are some other heavy tanks that I find are better, right? Like we discussed in our comparison. So that's how I'd sum this tank up, is just mediocre. And based on my play style, even though I like mobile heavies, I would say this is not worth 10,000 bonds, right? I would save the bonds for some of the tier 10s that they're going to release, right? And so, in conclusion, I would say that there's probably 4 categories that I have on why you're considering the IS-5. And so, if you like a tank that plays more like a medium, so you value mobility, I would say that the Renegade or the Patriot are better options for you. Both the T26 Patriot as well as the Renegade have better gun handling. And if you really want like a medium playstyle, I would say go with the Renegade or the Patriot. If you really like the heavy playstyle, like really good armor, I would say that the 50 TP prototype or the Defender are your better options there, or maybe the AMX M4, depending on which nation you need. So those tanks I would say are way better, have better armor profiles, as well as are just better brawlers. If you really need a Soviet crew trainer, I would really think about the Defender. It has way better stats overall. The gun, I would say, behaves very similarly to the IS-5, except the armor is just way better. And you get higher alpha as well as a lower shell cost. So you'll be profiting a little bit more in that tank. And then I would say that the IS-3A goes in that category as well, just because it's such a novel tank, and I have a lot of fun in that tank. But that tank only has 3 crew members, whereas most Soviet heavy tanks have 4. So it doesn't have a loader, so you won't be able to crew train as well in that tank. But if you really need a crew trainer, Defender, I would say all the way. And then finally, another reason why you would probably be considering the IS-5 is for credits. And there, the Patriot and the 50 TP are just better, right? The 50 TP, I would say, makes way more reliable credits, just because it has higher alpha damage as well as a lower shell cost by 300 credits. So, and as well as it's more accurate, so you're going to be hitting more of the shots, so you're going to be making more credits, right? So 50 TP, way better. And then obviously the Patriot, 255 credits per shot is just insane. And you also get APCR standard on the tank, so you get very good shell velocity on the tank as well. So I hope you found this video useful, and let me know if you want me to do a review on another tank, because I have around 12,000 bonds now, so I can review another tank in the shop, or I can save up for a tier 10, because I know those cost 15,000 bonds. So let me know what you guys want to see next. I appreciate all the support that you guys have given me. We'll out.